Hello and welcome to Maths with Mr Amison. In this video we'll be recapping basic fractions, and to do that I'll have a goal-free problem. So here's the question, or here's the information rather. Isa, Ellie and Jack have a party with 4 pizzas. Isa eats 1/5 of a pizza. Ellie eats 1 2/3 pizzas. Jack eats 2/3 as much pizza as Ellie. And the rest is shared between Isa and Jack evenly. Now I know that's a lot of information there, but see what things you can tell me based on that. See how many different things you can do with fractions based on that information. Have a go. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the things that I did with this. I'm going to start off fairly basic. So Isa had 1/5 of a pizza. So I'm representing a pizza here as a bar, and I've coloured in green how much of that pizza Isa ate. Ellie had 1 2/3 pieces of pizza. So 1 2/3 pieces, sorry. So I've used the same bar, same size bar, and this time I've split that bar into thirds. So 1 2/3 is 1 whole bar and then 2/3 of the next bar. So you can see that that is 5/3 altogether. So that's a bit of maths we've done there already, converting 1 2/3 to 5/3 as an improper fraction. And then Jack had 2/3 as much pizza as Ellie. So if I draw out Ellie's, that's 1 2/3. I want 2/3 of that. So if I split each of those 5/3 into thirds, like so, and then I find 2/3 of them, so for every 3 of these pieces that are now shaded, I have just 2 of them shaded, so I cross out those. I'll move those so that they're easier to understand, so I'll move all of these 3 here into these 3 x's, and I'll move the last one over to the left. And you can see that it is 10/9, because each bar is split into 9 pieces now. So you can see that we have 10/9 because each bar is split into 9 pieces. That's 9/9, and one more is 10/9 altogether. And you can also see therefore that that is 1 whole 1 and 1/9. 1 and 1/9. Alright? Then 2/3 of 1 2/3, we could represent it using the bar like that, but that's quite complicated and takes a long time. It's easy to visualize and understand once it's visually shown you, but it's not practical to do that in an exam situation. So if you were to want to find out 2/3 of 1 2/3, then what we'd need to do is 2/3 multiplied by 1 2/3, because of in maths is multiplied by. Now 1 2/3, we'd already figured out that that is 5/3, and you should be able to convert from mixed numbers to improper fractions by now. But to do so, essentially 1 whole 1 is 3/3 altogether, and then another 2/3, so that's 5/3 altogether. So if I convert that to a mixed number first, then we get 2/3 multiplied by 5/3. And when you multiply fractions, you do the numerators multiply together, so 2 times 5 is 10, and the denominators multiply together, 3 times 3 is 9. You can see we get 10/9, which is exactly what we got using the bar. Alright? Something else we could do is find out the total amount of pizza that has been eaten so far. In other words, do 1/5, add 1 2/3, add 1 1/9. We've already seen that 1 2/3 is 5/3. We've seen that Jack eats 10/9. So if we add those together, we need a common denominator. Now, the lowest common denominator of 5, 3 and 9 ends up being 45. So if I convert all of these fractions, find the equivalent fraction for all of these where the denominator is 45, I can then add them up. And whenever we add up fractions, we need to find a common denominator. Same with subtracting. Bear in mind that with multiplying and dividing, we do not need to find a common denominator, although it can be helpful at times if you know what you're doing. So here 1/5, if we multiply the 5 by 9 we get 45, so we need to do the same to the denominator. 3 times 15 is 45, so we have to multiply the numerator by 15 there, and 9 times 5 is 45, so we need to multiply the numerator by 5 for 10 ninths. So we get 9 45ths plus 75 45ths plus 50 45ths, which is 134 over 45 altogether. And we could separate that into a mixed number if we wish to. The total amount of pizza left after that's been eaten, because we started with 4 pizzas, as it says in the question, 4 take away 134 over 45. Well, 4, we need to convert that to something over 45. Something divided by 45 was 4, well that ends up being 180. So this is the same as 180 over 45 take away 134 over 45, which is 46 over 45, or 1 and 1/45. Finally, we can find out the amount of pizza that Isa and Jack get when the rest is shared out evenly. You can see that because we have 1 and 1/45 left, that's 46 45ths. If we're sharing that between 2 people, well, dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by a half. Or in other words, when we divide fractions, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of what we were dividing by. Now the reciprocal of 2 is a half. Reciprocal means we flip the fraction if you have a fraction, or put 1 over that number if it's not. Or in other words, if it's a reciprocal, when they multiply together we get 1. So 2 times a half is equal to 1. So a half is the reciprocal of 2, and 2 is the reciprocal of a half. So if we multiply by that reciprocal instead of divide by the 2, we get 46 over 45 times by a half, which is 46 over 90, or 23 over 45. Another way we could have divided by 2 is to say that we were dividing by 2 over 1, which means that we can divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 1, which would give us the same thing, 23 over 45. But that's not the standard way most people recognise how to divide fractions, and it doesn't work nicely in every case. So this is the most efficient this is the method that will work every time. Okay, well thanks for watching, hope you found that useful, and bye for now.